In today's Leeds news, Burnley prep with under-21s involved, Ridsdale's incredible attempt to defend his Leeds exit, and no free transfer for Meslier in January. Hi folks, welcome back to The View. Friday morning, last video of the week. It's the 17th of October. I hope your week's gone well. We're getting ready for Burnley tomorrow. We'll have a watch along over on bigup.com if you want to come and join us there. It's free, there's no ads. We do watch alongs every game over on that platform as well. You can check it out, bigup.com, Leeds United View, and you'll find us there. Also, happy birthday to Leeds United, 106 years old today. So there will be likely some sort of a celebration or acknowledgement in this weekend's game against Burnley. There's a lot of stuff to talk about, including Peter Ridsdale's latest attempt to distance himself from the financial crash that affected Leeds United for nearly 2 decades. And we've got some extra detail on that as we talk through it. And I'd love to know people's thoughts who will remember it at that time. But we'll start off today with the preparation for the Burnley game with some academy players getting involved. As we know from Daniel Farke's press conference yesterday, Leeds won't have Willie Gnonto until next week after he had to have a small procedure on a hernia issue during the international break. Dan James is probably fit enough, according to Farke, to be on the bench and might have some involvement towards the back end of the game, meaning Brendan Aronson, with a very short turnaround time from his time with USMNT during this international break, is Leeds' likely only option on the right-hand side. As Leeds get ready for the Burnley game this weekend, they will have some potential future stars involved in the training sessions and might even make the bench to give Farke some options on that right-hand side. Defenders Luke Madikevich, along with midfielders Reece Chadwick and Sam Chambers, have all been involved in the Leeds United first team training this week, and that's some indication that maybe one or two of them might be involved. Sam Chambers and Reece Chadwick have both made the Leeds United bench before and had some time on the pitch, and Harry Gray is still out at the moment with a hip flexor issue, and he's not likely to be back involved with the first team until next weekend, and we'll see where he goes at that point. Still some talk around that situation. If you want more details on the Harry Gray contract, we covered it in yesterday's news. It's not all bad news, some light at the end of the tunnel that's possibly not a train, but you can check that out there as well. But Burnley come into this game, have their own sets of issues, and tonight we will have the video out. The match preview is being rebranded as the stats pack because it is just stats, data and form, so you can check that out later on. We'll give you all the information from both sides heading into the game this weekend against Burnley. But let's move on and talk about the main story of the day. And this is quite a chunky one, but I wanted to give you some historical information to back up or go against, what Peter Ridsdale has said in his comments today. But the Ridsdale era gave us a glimpse at European and domestic success for a very short amount of time, but overspending based on loans, bad financial management, followed by a fire sale, led to Peter Ridsdale exit before the club then got relegated and went into financial meltdown that would keep Leeds United out of the top flight for 16 years. Ridsdales famously said that we lived the dream, but the reality of the nightmare that followed is still lingering around the club to this day. But Ridsdale has yet again gone on the record in an attempt to retcon his time and his exit at Leeds United, and has made some incredible comments claiming that the club was sustainable when he left the position. So I wanted to get into this and give a little bit more detail on this so that everyone has all of the facts and not just a soundbite from Peter Ridsdale, especially newer fans to Leeds United. But according to a report from the BBC Sport in 2003, they said then the Leeds United's losses amounted to £17.2 million for just a 6-month period in December 2002, shortly before Ridsdale's exit. When you convert that £17.2 million into modern day money, you adjust it for inflation, it's now £31.7 million in a 6-month period. Now speaking with TalkSport, Ridsdale's claimed that the club was sustainable under his leadership and that the only financial issues that happened once the club had been relegated after he had left the club, which is a wild claim on its own. Ridsdale was asked on TalkSport that if stricter financial rules had been in place at that time, could it have saved Leeds United? And he said the following: I don't believe it would, because people keep throwing Leeds United back in my face, but the reality was after I left, 18 months later, they were relegated. Those days it was a separate subject. As you know, parachute payments didn't exist, and it was on relegation that Leeds got into financial difficulties. When I was chairman, we were never outside of the top 5, and therefore we were sustainable until relegation. Now, Ridsdale's relying a little bit on modern Champions League qualifications for this. The top 5 wasn't really important for Leeds United. What was important at that time was the top 2 positions, because only 2 sides qualified for European Champions League football at that point. And while he is sticking to this line that he was sustainable and his exit wasn't part of Leeds' financial meltdown, his own Living the Dream press conference gave us all enough information at that time to know that the financial issues at Leeds had started well before Ridsdale had left the club. And it meant Leeds were in a constant position of having to sell their best players and future stars in order to stay afloat, which subsequently then led to the inevitable relegation from the Premier League as Leeds continued to sell and weaken the squad and fall down the Premier League table. Gerald Krasner, whose consortium took over Leeds United after Peter Ridsdale's exit, described the Leeds United finances at that time as a basket case, and the club's financial situation was described as being in a dire situation, with debts at that point, just after Ridsdale's exit, exceeding £100 million. Under Ridsdale, Leeds borrowed £60 million, which was put against future gate receipts as well as continued Champions League qualification. And when Leeds failed to get into that top 2 position and missed out on that Champions League spot, all of the cards started to fall down around that structure. When Ridsdale stepped down, Leeds reportedly owed £103 million in debt. At that point, with no major TV money coming in from Sky at that point, that was a huge amount of money. And at that point, no club in the Premier League had been in that situation. Ridsdale can argue that the club was sustainable under his leadership, but all of the data, the finances, the reports at that time, which you've seen on screen as we've gone through this, say a very different story. Critics at the time said that Leeds United's collapse was well underway before Ridsdale decided to resign and walk away. And those of us who lived through that and remember it, remember very, very clearly that Peter Ridsdale's financial management was the issue. Overspending on players. Seth Johnson being a massive one, a player who barely played for Leeds United and cost Leeds United a huge amount of money even after he had stopped playing for Leeds United. Leeds had let players go and continued to pay 50% of their wages in order to get some money into the club at that time as well. And we lost all of our best players and our brightest young homegrown players at that time, and that led ultimately to people like Ken Bates taking ownership of Leeds United, then followed by Massimo Cellino. So all of that were the cards that fell after the financial issues that were caused during Peter Ridsdale's leadership of the club. Not just him, whoever else was involved with him at that time, but to say that the club was sustainable and the financial issues didn't start until after he left the club is an incredible statement to make, given the history that everyone remembers. Let's move on. Let's talk about Ilan Melier. Leeds are keen to try and recoup some amount of money for goalkeeper Ilan Melier after failing to sell the French shot stopper during the summer. In December, Meslier will be able to negotiate a pre-contract free transfer away from the club to any side outside of the UK once the season finishes. But according to reports coming out today, there is a club within the UK who is trying to get Meslier for free in January. TalkSport claimed that Leeds will try and block any attempt for any club within the UK to pick up Meslier on a free transfer this January, after a report in Scotland came out that Celtic were interested in trying to sign Meslier for free in January. Leeds, as I say, will attempt one last time to try and sell Meslier for some amount of monetary value this winter window, which will then potentially help put some money into a kitty to fund any type of transfer business that Leeds will look to do this winter. The report also claims that there is some scope for a transfer to Celtic that could involve a transfer fee, but at this stage, any monetary amount of money is likely to be on the smaller side. Leeds wanted £5 million for Meslier during the summer. That's likely now to be significantly less than that as well, but he does represent 100% of PSR profit, so even at that point, some money is better than nothing. Meslier does hold all the cards, as we've said before in this. He can make a decision in January to negotiate a transfer back to France and sit out the remainder of his contract and leave for free at the end of the season. He could decide to move earlier and give Leeds some amount of money in their pocket for his time at the club, but he is the one that will decide this moving forward. Leeds United are very much passengers on this situation. If Mez decides he wants to go in January, Leeds can get a fee. If he decides he's happy to sit it out, then he can wait. He's on decent money at Leeds United and he probably won't get that level of money anywhere else. So it's probably better for him to sit on the bench and pick up that money. We'll wait and see what he decides to do. But Leeds would likely try and get something in, and it would be a benefit for Leeds to try and get some amount of money in from at this point after failing, as I say, to sell him in the summer. Folks, that was going to be it for me today and this week. You can check us out tonight. We'll have the match preview, which will be repackaged as the stats pack. Short video or live stream that will go out later on today. You can check that out if you want to. And then back tomorrow for the watch along over on bigup.com for Burnley v Leeds United. We'll see how we get on that. And a big couple of games coming up for Leeds. Fingers crossed we can get some major points in this block of 4 games and put us in a decent position heading into what will be a tricky Christmas period for Leeds as well. Enjoy the rest of your day. Talk to you soon. See ya. Bye.